So again, if we're going to be involved in that discussion between kids, or the fight between the two kids for the ball, our involvement should be teaching right and wrong. In other words, using that level of expertise that you have, that the kids don't have, to positively influence the situation. So if they're fighting over the ball, find out whose ball it was, and then work it out between them, so that way the kid who is being a jerk and wanting to take the thing that wasn't his is learning the lesson. You can't just do that. There's a right and wrong in that situation. And then the kid whose ball it was, and by the way, if you want to teach sharing, the way of doing it is not to say, well, here, share, give him the ball. No, what you should do is reason with the kid and ask the kid if he wants to share, and try to lead them in the course of the kid deciding for himself with his ball that he wants to share. And if the kid comes to that conclusion, it's like, oh, great, now the kid can share. And now you've taught something that the other person could have, you're modeling for the other kid how to communicate, to ask for the thing that they want without going over there and just forcibly grabbing it. And you're also teaching the other kid how to be reasonable and share if that's what you want to impose on kids. And by the way, it's not entirely clear that you want to teach your kids to share. Because a lot of times you're going to have things that you're going to have earned, or your kids will have earned, that other kids will want to come over and take. I can't for the life of me understand some of you who will study for a test or do well on a test or some homework, and then you'll do the work, and then you'll let somebody else just kind of copy off of you. I wonder in that situation there, if you were the kid when you were little who had the ball and your parent took it away from you to give it to the other one because sharing is good. And then and I wonder how many of you who were copying on the one who, when you were young, you learned all I got to do is yell and scream and just take it, and eventually they'll make them share with me. And so now you feel entitled to other people's stuff. I wonder how much of that has happened. Similarly, if you're driving, right, and maybe you and your siblings were in the back seat, and then you guys start fighting, and your parents just yell at both of you. Same thing. You're teaching the kids that one of them is, that it doesn't matter who's right or wrong, because it's all about what's easier for us as the babysitter. So it's an uncomfortable truth, and I see that it bothers some of you when I put it that way, but it's absolutely true. Now there are going to be situations where you've got two people who maybe are at least morally they're both right. One example I used last period, it's debatable, but think of it this way. You're the ruler of a country, you're a leader of some people, and you run out of resources. And then there are people next door who have a whole bunch of resources, so now you've got a choice. You can either invade them and take their resources, or you can let your people die. If you're the leader, you might have an obligation to your people to make sure that they survive. So therefore, it might be a matter of, well, but it's wrong that they're coming in and stealing. Yeah, it's also wrong, though, that you'd let your people suffer and that you'd let your people starve and die. So you've got these competing moral interests. In that kind of a case there, it's like, well, they both might be right, in that sense.
Instead of instructing the other side, why can't they just act?
Because there's no parent.
Accommodate,
Because there's no parent there to take away their ball. Think about that. If somebody comes over and asks you for your resources, you might say, well, yeah, we should share. Oh, you have a lot.
What am I going to gain from it?
What's that?
The other side's going to be like, what am I going to gain from it?
Well, not even that, but even in terms of what do we have to lose from it? You've got a bunch right now, but are you going to have a whole bunch next year or the year after that? You look at the history of the world, I think about, you look at Ethiopia, and if you look back historically, Ethiopia, man, they had some of the richest lands in the world at the time. And they had some of the richest rulers who have ever lived. Some of the most materially flourishing countries and civilizations we've ever seen. And yet you look at the country now, and the areas, it's a desert, it's a wasteland. Why? Because things change. So you wonder, so we might be doing well today, but will we be doing well next year? And so there might even be a thing there where it's like we could share, but if you're the ruler, you have an obligation to your people as well to make sure that they don't starve to death. And so, right now you're fine. Who knows about next year? So there's a fight. And by the way, that might be how some of you see it. If I don't let this person cheat off of me and they're a friend of mine, well, then they might fail the class and not graduate. Do I want to let them do that? Who knows? It's an extreme example, but you get the idea that there's sometimes there are these competing rights. In other words, both sides are right. Another example, and this is one that might occur to you more commonly than leading your people to starvation. You come into the classroom, let's say, and you go, hey, Scanlon, and I go, hey, what's up? And you're like, Yeah. Well, what? Well, the way you said that. I mean, like you're all mad or something. I'm not mad. Well, the way you said it just now, you sounded mad. Did the way I said that sound mad? Well, from a whether I did or didn't, from a practical perspective, it's the same effect. In other words, I wasn't mad, but if that's the way you heard it, then it's impacting you in that same way. So then you got to work this thing out. I didn't mean it that way. That's not how I didn't mean for it to come off. Rather than argue, that's not how it came off. If that's how they heard it, then that's how it came off. It doesn't mean that you said it that way, but it does mean it came off that way. And so you got to figure out at that point, what do you want to do? You want to double down and argue and fight over this thing? Do you want to work it out or what? So there are these situations in life sometimes where you've got these rights and wrongs, but I do want to ask you kind of if you can establish this difference, this distinction between tragedy and evil. Like we tend to use these words almost interchangeably. We'll say something is a tragedy, when in actuality it's not really so much a tragedy as it is something evil. So for example, an earthquake hits San Diego, and whatever, kills 500,000 people, whatever, big earthquake, whatever. Do we look at that and say, the earth is evil?
No.
Probably not. There is a sense in which we do that, which I'll mention when we get to the reading that we're going to work on today, called theodicy. But there is a sense there of, it's not evil. The earth didn't decide, screw San Diego and then smack us. But it is a tragedy. It is a tragedy. It's tragic when that many people die. Similarly, school shooting. Someone comes in here and shoots the place up. We oftentimes will look at that and say, 20 were killed. It's a tragedy. That's not a tragedy in the same way. That's evil. There's a distinction between those two. Tragedies are things that happen and there's no real impetus behind it, or there's no person doing it. But when a person chooses to inflict suffering on a bunch of others, we can see that as evil. Yeah.
It's kind of like fate and destiny. There's this whole the difference. It's like with destiny, it's something that you have to do, but with fate, it's something that you can't. It's out of your control.
Yeah. Yeah, with fate, and by the way, we're going to talk about those notions of fate and destiny and karma and meant to be's today when we look at the reading. Yeah, but because there's something really significant behind that. I'll mention it. When you say something like, oh, it's destined to happen, what does that mean? Or it's fated to happen. It's fated to happen. What does that mean?
You have your life planned.
Yeah, it's planned. Now, if your life is planned out, what does that suggest metaphysically?
There's a higher being.
That there's a higher being that's written the chapters of your life. And you're just kind of going along for the ride. We wouldn't look at a book and look at a character in the book and say, oh, this person has absolute free will. Because they don't. The author is the one who's describing what's going to happen to this character. That person's fate is fated, man. It's in the pages. So when we use words like, oh, it's destiny, or it's fate, or we say it's meant to be. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. Or we'll say, oh, karma will take care of this. We're implying that in all of these cases that there's some sort of a higher power that's ordering the universe in such a way that it's going to turn out this way, regardless of how we operate within the universe, with the confines of the rule structures. And so it's an interesting thing, because if you find yourself using that language, it'd be worth kind of considering and asking yourself, wait, do I believe that that's the case? Because if so, by the way, that will affect how you live. If there's a higher being who's ordering your life, well, that's, you don't have to worry too much. Things are taken care of. If there's no being that's ordering your life, well, good news. That means you have absolute free will, and you're free to order your life however you want to, without the confines of, if I try to do this, but the being wants to stop me, it'll pull me back on track, which is a very frustrating way to go through life, if you believe that. But that also means, by the way, that you're responsible for what you do, because you have the power to change yourself, to change your structures. So, yeah, so thinking about it in terms of that with regards to a distinction between evil and tragedy, if there is a distinction that's there, how we kind of order those things. And then understanding that sometimes you do have two sides that are both right. And that's hard to distinguish between the two. Sorry, it's difficult to kind of order between the two. Because you got two sides who are right, well, who do you go with? How do you resolve that if they're both right? We'll see this in school, by the way. I mean, I think I've mentioned to you before, I used to fill in as an AP. And one of the things that we're given as a kind of like a guide is if you have two students that get into a fight and you bring them in to the office and you're supposed to find out what happened, you know? And what are we supposed to do? Figure out, who threw punches, who started it, whatever. But the idea at the end is make them both wrong. You know, in other words, so this person came up to you and you've never met them before in your life. No, never met him before in my life. And he just punched you in the face. Yeah. And he promised you another one. Yeah. So you hit him back? Yeah. Do you really think that was the right thing to do? Yeah, he was going to punch me again. What are you supposed to do when someone punches you? Punch him back. No, you're not. What are you supposed to do?
Tell a teacher.
You're supposed to go tell a teacher. So what could you have done to have kind of diffused the situation? I guess I could have run away and called a teacher. Yeah, but you didn't, right? You kind of escalated it by throwing a punch back. Well, yeah, I suppose so, but so you were wrong too in this situation, right?
Then you are saying you're self-defending.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I was defending myself. Well, but you were wrong in defending yourself. I suppose so. The way you set that thing up, they do the Jedi mind trick on you. Because if you're in the right, and by the way, we understand that there is a right, but if you're in the right and then the other person's in the right, how do you resolve that? You guys get into a fight and you're both right about it. How do we resolve that? We suspend you for a few days, then you come back for round 2. Because we haven't resolved this thing yet. So the idea is that if you're both wrong, then there is no resolution necessary. The resolution is just you guys go your separate ways. Or we pull you both into the same room and put you guys across the table from each other, or not across the table, we put you in a circle together to work out your problems and talk about it. And so sometimes, so essentially it's this idea of trying to assign blame in certain ways just to diffuse situations. And so, and the reason for that is because it's hard to diffuse rights, two people who are right. Or at least if they believe that they are. And we should draw a distinction between believing that we're right and actually being right. Because oftentimes we don't really believe that we're right. We just believe it's what we want. And so we'll come across that. So, even going just real quick back to the cheating thing, you might sit there and think, like, I have to cheat because I don't understand what's going on in this class. I'm lost. It's too difficult for me. I've already told you, if you complete all of your assignments, I'm not going to fail you. You're not going to not graduate because you don't understand the stuff in here. The stuff we go over, like I say, it's like coffee, man. It's not for everybody. I get that. And I'm not going to fail you if you, as long as you try and do all your assignments, even if you have like a 38% because you bombed all of your tests and all that. I'm not going to fail you. I'll still pass you if you give it a shot. If you don't complete all your assignments and you're like, oh, I don't get it, and so you don't do half of your assignments, well, of course I'm not going to pass you for that. But if you give it a shot, why not? It's not harm. Where's the harm there? But me saying that, I don't think is going to change anyone's behavior. Even though you know that intuitively, we'll still kind of revert to those behaviors because we'll think, I have to do this. It's not that you have to, and I'm telling you right now you don't have to. But what it really is I don't want to, because I don't want to get a 37% in a class and then what that says about me. And I don't want to, somehow we feel better if we cheat and get 60% than if we do it ourselves and get 37%.
I'd rather fail than cheat.
Yeah, at least you know, what there is to work on. And I don't think you're ever going to come across a class that puts less pressure on you than this class. Anybody in here is just sit there and go, man, I'm overworking Scout's class. He's too demanding on those timelines. May 22nd, what? It's only 4 months away. Maybe you're going to get all that stuff done in 4 months? But again, just to fill it all in. We don't have these needs between right and wrong or anything. So, questions? Yeah.
In the new music video by Eminem, he does Darkness, which is like the perspective of the LA shooting, of the shooter. And I think it was like a really bad song because it's really hard to take the perspective of a shooter when everyone knows he's wrong.
And yeah, there are people who we know are absolutely wrong. We can seem, and by the way, when we say stuff like that, we're also making a pretty deep metaphysical statement. When we say that the LA shooter is wrong, well, we might now, some of us might take the other side and go, well, from his perspective, he's right. Okay, but perspectives aren't reality. It's like, is this stamp red? Well, it depends on your perspective. No, it corresponds to a thing that's actually in the world, that's independent of perception. And if anything, this just goes back to prove what Socrates is talking about, that our perceptions are oftentimes wrong. You know, we oftentimes see the world, we mishear things, we misinterpret data. But there's something important there to understand why it is that somebody would do something like that. And it's hard for us. It's like if I asked you, why did Hitler do what he did? You know, we look at, and we always go to Hitler because he's the extreme example, but we might sit there and go, oh, it's because he was crazy. Okay, and that's safe, by the way, because if he's crazy, then we don't have to deal with it. You know, that just means he's an anomaly, and we don't have to worry about it, because how many Hitlers are out there? I suggest to you there's way more than you realize, because it just has to do with how much power somebody has. Like, for example, I was just telling someone this morning that their washing machine's still broken. And so this morning I had to wash something in the morning, so I went to the laundromat at 6 a.m. And I meant to be there at 6 a.m. I got to like at 6:10 or so. And I went in and it smelled really bad. It smells like poop, you know? And I'm like, all right, well, it's good. You know, to be reminded once in a while where you came from. No matter how far you go in life. And so I go over at one point, I put them in, I go to wash my hands, and I realize why it smells so bad. Someone took a shit in the sink. That's why. Because it's welcome to Saturday school. Because the bathroom, no joke, is like from here to the board. That's where the bathroom is. The person could just gone. Now, why didn't the person? I don't know. But I sat there looking at the last remnants of the fecal matter in the sink, realizing some things, and being humbled a little bit in others, and realizing, going, I wonder if it was a homeless person and the person who worked here wouldn't let him use the bathroom because you needed like little tokens to get in the bathroom. So I wonder if the person just decided need to go, and so why not? Why not in the sink? Now we could look at that and go, that's a horrible thing he did. Well, in the sink, in the parking lot, did the guy choose what he thought was the best option of all of these? At least he's going to flush it down in the sink or whatever. I have no idea. I was not there when the shit was taken, but I was there for the aftermath. So sometimes we'll see even things like that and just kind of realize, well, he had a perspective. I wouldn't do it, or maybe I would, if I was in his situation. If you're in that situation, like people complain about, you shouldn't give homeless people money. Why not? They're just going to use it for drugs and alcohol. Yeah, not like you guys, right? Yeah. Not like my students who don't use any of their money for drugs and alcohol. Yeah, the difference is going to be, sometimes that when you screw up, you've got friends to pick you up, or you got family to try to get you back on the right track. This person might not have that. So anyway, going back to the idea is that with a shooter like that, taking on the perspective, that's a pretty deep thing to do. I haven't heard the song, but I don't know if it's actually a deep psychological exploration. But here's why the person would have done it. Not so that we can forgive it, but so that we can understand it and see the signs of it when it crops back up. Because if one person does it, there's lots of other people out there. People act out on symptoms of I'll say that. They act out on symptoms. And if one person has a symptom, what have we learned from the coronavirus? Yeah, there's a lot of it out there. Even if we haven't seen the signs of it yet. The symptoms are out there and it's being spread. So, anyway, others? Cool. All right, go ahead and put those away. Don't forget these are due tomorrow. Yeah.